Welcome to today's presentation regarding the current threat to the federal system of America. The federal system of America is comprised of the federal Constitution, U.S. Constitution, the compound republics, which is made up of 50 states, which are 50 republics with their own constitutions as backups, and the American Federation. Yes, this is Bill Jones again from Freedom's Nest. Another presentation. Also, we're with recapturefederalism.com. Also, maybe advertise again. Also, I have another site, passive right now, which I'm going to start reactivating just as I did with recapturefederalism.com. And that's Operation Official Misconduct, and it'll be more onto the solutions of some of our problems that we have in America today. And today's subject and episode is episode 6, and the title and presentation concerns itself with gun control by the communist book. Oh, Bill, there you go again. Another controversial headline, title. Yes, it is, and everyone will be because it's a controversial subject. Up on the screen, you'll see my observations that I have about the secret and silent and secret American insurrection and revolutionary movement, which has been going on for probably 100 years. Very active starting in the 60s, and that's where the term revolutionary movement really became out into the public by people who were very active in that. And of course, that's all communism. It's all about communism. Everything is about communism today. You won't hear about it. You won't hear about it in the media and by organizations and things of that sort. And the question probably begs itself is, Bill, why do you get so involved in this stuff? Well, if you heard any of my stuff before, I've been anti-communist for 50 years. I'm third-generation anti-socialist, anti-Marxist. Served in the United States Navy 4 years, Cold War warrior, Vietnam veteran. Yep. And I've been saying for decades now, same people I fought in Vietnam were fighting here today. They're running things, the class warfare. And that leads us to the subject today. We hear about this gun control. Well, gun control, we didn't have any problem with gun control for 200 years. But oh, we have it now. They're out to get us. My father-in-law, my late father-in-law, who died 20 years ago, but before I was even married to my wife, going out with her, and I remember in 1962, he was a life member, National Rifle Association, reloaded his own stuff, was a hunter, and he told me in 1962, yeah, he's a World War II vet, he told me, they're going to come after your guns. Beware, they're going to come after your guns. He never used the word communism, but I know, since I was already an anti-communist, I knew what he was talking about. The they is the communist, pro-communist, communist sympathizers, whether they're members or actual members, sympathetic, or just useful idiots, brainwashed ship of fools. So I'm going to bring, you see the slide I've had on there, and we talk about the criminal class. You see the communist criminal class over there, and me and along people, NRA and people like that. We're with a free citizens class, and there's a class warfare going on, and it may or may not get ugly. It may get very ugly if they succeed in getting the guns. But we're going to go to the next slide. And where do I get all my information? Nobody looks at this stuff, and the reason I know all about this stuff And I go over and over, and if you ever heard my stuff before, and I would continue to do it, what do I talk about? I talk about the Communist Manifesto, and then there's also the guidelines on the organizational structure of communist parties, on the methods and content of work, 1921. And you go in here, there's 8 sections, and you go in here to the propaganda and agitation. Propaganda and agitation, section 4. Section 4. And they talk about these different things. And this is all in 30 and 31. Let's see what else they go oh, that's 20 there. But propaganda and agitation goes into questions regarding propaganda and everything, and part of that propaganda, and you can tell, you'll hear people talking and spouting the propaganda, you know, like Mr. Bloomberg and his organization. They start these little organizations up and push for this stuff and make it look like they're innocent stuff, but no, it's deception. They're not honest about who they really are, and they come up with this propaganda. And you get, there's I mentioned 30 before, and that's the next slide, because that's where you get into your gun control. They never did call it gun control, but they call it gun control now, make it look like something else. It's really communism. And in 30 they started talking about it, and which is the whole section, number 30 section, and it had to do with the propaganda work in the Army and the Navy of the capitalist state. They're anti-capitalist. So this is all part of that. This gun control is just a small little speck in the overall society of communism. But they did it with the military, and they went through, and there was installation. They even talked about rifle clubs and territorial militias and that, and how do you get into that and affect them negatively, brainwash them. It hasn't been too successful with the National Rifle Association and their state associations. No, they still got their head on straight, because they realize this, and just like my late father-in-law, they knew it way back when, and it's nothing new to them. But they are up against the battle of the big boys. You look down in that first paragraph there, and you'll see words like militaristic, revolutionary battles. The communism is not a peaceful ideology. To me, it's a satanic, violent, hateful, I'm going to say it, theocracy, and that's what they're doing with this insurrection and revolt that they have going on, because that's what they're all about. You ever read and I suggest to everybody to read this stuff. Again, you can go online. Marxist.org that's where I get all my stuff. That's where I make copies of this stuff. They're proud of their stuff. They're revolutionaries. They've been revolutionaries for 150 years plus. And you look at some of the words they got in here. The rank and file, soldiers, and that's the enlisted men. They tried doing that, and it has not been successful until somewhat recently. And now we have the religious persecution happening in the military, and that's where it is going. They're targeting. No one's standing up, by the way. That's what you see going on there. And also this gun control is in fact violations of Title 18, Chapter 115, treason, sedition, and subversion, and that's what all this is subversion and gun control, and get gun control legislation. That's what that is, subversion against our system that our founders gave us and really comes from God. And they use this, and they talk about fermenting agitation for the democratic election of all officers and soldiers and sailors. They want to have elections for these people. Of course, there's Section 2, they talk about democratic centralization, centralism. And that's part of this too. That's how they're doing gun control. They talk about consuls that can be very effective in undermining the pillars of capitalist class rule. That's what gun control's all about. It's getting ready for the enslavement of the American people. Don't give up your guns. I want to read this last chapter there. The greatest vigilance and incisiveness are always necessary in agitating against the bourgeois. And by the way, bourgeois is a French word. They equated on page 31 of the principles of communism. On page 31, they talk about conservative and bourgeois. They equate that, by the way. But bourgeois is the middle class. If you're going to have class warfare, you got to have a couple of classes fighting. Of course, the leadership, they're off. They don't fight. They just direct everything. But here we have necessary in agitating against the bourgeois, the conservatives, special class war troops. And what they're suggesting is, us with the guns, the gun owners, we're part of the middle class, and they consider us as their enemies, and we are the troops, the enemy troops. Okay? That's what they're talking about there. Especially against their volunteer armed gangs. They're talking about, we're armed gangs. When in effect, of course, and I'll get to it in just a second, the armed gangs, they have those too. And the Illinois State General Assembly considers those street gangs terrorists. They said so in a legislative finding in 2012. Now we'll get back to reading him. Where their social composition and corruption made it possible. See, they talk about the corruption of capitalism. Yeah, there may or may not be there corruption in capitalism. We do have a lot of banks and what have you. I wonder how corrupt they are. But they've been corrupted into being the allies of the communists. And I'll get into that in another presentation. If they have homogeneous bourgeois class character, for example, in troops drawn purely from the officer corps, they must be exposed before the entire population, made so despicable and heated that the resulting isolation grinds them into pieces from within. There you go. They want gun control, and there's another section over here. They talk about right in where it says 30, that paragraph, the last sentence, every possibility for the proletariat, that's the other class that we're fighting with, supposedly, it's all made up, every possibility for the proletariat, let's substitute street gangs and criminals, to get weapons into their hands must be exploited to the fullest. You wonder why they don't go in and grab those guns out of the south side of Chicago and the west side of Chicago? Because they want them to have them. They are the communist troops. Some of them at least are. They've been set up there for 4 decades, the communist troops. And you see what they do. They did it down and brought them down to Ferguson, Missouri. Yeah, those are communist troops that were stealing in them stores and shooting and into those retail stores, going in and stealing stuff from New York, California, and Chicago. the Crips and the Bloods and the Gangster Disciples and the Vice Lords, Black Pea Stone Nation, on and on and on. Oh yeah, and the ones we're getting across the border, MS-13. Oh yeah, oh yeah, they move them around and they use them for their advantage, the communist advantage. And I think is enough for this particular presentation. And until the next time, we want you to come by my website. We're going to be doing it every day. Every day we're going to have us an episode, and I'm going to work on it. We're going to have more of them. We're going to activate my other site, and we're going to talk about solutions. There are solutions. The first solution to gun control, of course, is to resist the communist action on trying to get rid of your guns. Don't give up your guns. That's what they want, because that's the first thing you're going to lose. Because as soon as your guns are gone, they will be enslaving you completely. That is your self-defense. Don't give up the guns. Thank you for joining me today, and please return soon to recapturefederalism.com. Please come to the site and subscribe so you can get notice of new presentations.